Soft light or hard light? Which one is the right choice for your next portrait? If you've ever struggled to decide, you're not alone. The lighting you choose does more than just affect brightness, it changes the entire mood of an image. Today I'm going to walk you through real-world examples that show exactly when and why you might want to use soft or hard light. This isn't about specific gear. You don't need expensive tools to achieve these looks. It's about understanding how light behaves and making choices that support your creative vision. So, let's get started. Now, before we dive in, there are a few things I want to go over. You can achieve soft or hard light in the studio or on location. If you're on location, maybe you're going to use a large softbox with flash, or maybe you're just going to use the sun and let its direct light rays create really hard light. There also is a third option. You could use continuous light indoors or outdoors, and that would allow you to create soft or hard light depending on the modifier that you're using. So don't think that anything I'm going over today is just about using strobe or just about using ambient or available natural light. You could also use continuous lights. And as long as you're using continuous lights in similar modifiers that I'm going to be using flash in today, you're going to get substantially the same results. I'm just using these examples as a way to teach you the concept so that you can learn the difference between hard light and soft light. Let's look at the actual difference between soft light and hard light. Understanding this will help you decide which approach best suits your style and subject. Soft light is typically created when you have a large light source relative to your subject, meaning that the light looks big in their field of view. The larger the light appears from their perspective, the softer the result. I'm sure you've heard this said before, that the larger the light source is relative to the subject, the softer the light will be, but the shorthand that I like to use for this is size equals softness. Soft light results in highlights that retain detail, smooth transitions from midtone to shadow, and reduced texture in the skin. It's often used for general portraiture, but it could be used for beauty and fashion work as well because it produces a more flattering, natural look. Hard light, on the other hand, usually comes from a smaller light source relative to the subject. From their perspective, it's going to look really small. A hard light source creates high contrast, specular highlights, and abrupt deep shadows. It also enhances texture, which could be a negative or a positive depending on what you're looking for. It's great for dramatic stylized work where you want crisp definition. This could be for fashion or editorial photography. So when you're choosing between soft and hard light, you're really deciding how much contrast you want and how quickly light transitions to shadow and how much texture you want to show. Now let's look at real-world examples using soft and hard light. This portrait of Jason is an example of soft light created with a large single light source. I used a large softbox behind a scrim. Once the light from the modifier hit the scrim, it effectively became a large 8 by 8 foot or 2.4 by 2.4 meter light source. But if you don't have this gear, you can get a similar result using a large umbrella with a diffusion cover or even a large softbox close up, which is what I used to shoot this other look with Jason. Now there's a common myth that soft light wraps around your subject. But the truth is, light doesn't bend or flow or curve around objects like water. It travels in straight lines until it hits something, and then it either is reflected or absorbed. The first time I heard this was from a mentor, and he just blurted out that light goes until it hits something, and what else do you need to know? This actually sounded to me at the time as overly simplistic and not very sophisticated and kind of sarcastic. But truth be told, it's actually true. In this setup, the left side of Jason's face was closer to the light, and so that part was able to see the full surface of the scrim. So think of it this way. I always like to think about putting myself in the perspective of the subject. So just think, if you were on Jason's left side and you look towards the scrim, you would be able to see the whole surface. That's what I mean by saying that the left side of his face could see the whole scrim. So that meant that it's going to get all of the illumination from the scrim. It's going to be bright and it's going to be a very soft source. But because of the curve of his face, the right side only sees part of the scrim, the part of the scrim closest to the camera. This difference in coverage is what creates a smooth transition from midtone on his left side to shadow on his right side. There is no wrap, it's just a gradual fall off based on the physics of light traveling in straight lines and how much of it can reach each part of his face. If you're a natural light shooter, you could easily get the same look outdoors on a cloudy day or from a large window. Now let's look at soft light in a more dramatic, cinematic application. This dance portrait series of Joao and Edson was designed to have a painterly, classical feel. The softness here enhances the shape of their bodies without introducing deep shadows that could make the scene feel a little harsh and heavy-handed. Notice how their skin retains detail without highlights blowing or the shadows really overwhelming the image. This type of lighting is perfect for subjects where movement, form, and elegance are the focus. You can use soft light in ways that are subtle and natural or dramatic and sculptural, depending on how you position your modifier or use multiple modifiers and control the background. In this particular scenario, I used a 190 centimeter or 75-inch octobox boomed out over the set and coming straight down to create almost a skylight sort of effect. And then to edge out or sculpt their bodies, I used two 175 by 33 centimeters or 1 by 6 foot strip softboxes on the sides. I'll put the exact measurements on screen, I'm not exactly sure, but I had them coming in from the back to edge out their bodies or from the side to sometimes light their face and sculpt out their form a little more. And the three modifiers together work to create a really three-dimensional feeling. Now let's shift to hard light. This black and white portrait of Oneka was shot using a small, high-contrast modifier. Specifically, I used an Elinchrom 27-inch or 70-centimeter silver beauty dish. Unlike soft light, which creates a gradual shift between light and shadow, hard light and beauty dishes specifically create crisp, well-defined edges. And speaking of edges, I also used 3 grid reflectors from the back, one over each shoulder and one boomed out behind the top center of the set in order to edge out her body and create a hair light. This scene was really high contrast, which is perfect for black and white photography because it emphasizes shape, highlights, facial structure, and it adds drama without relying on color. You see every detail, every transition, and the lighting itself becomes a defining element of the image. Before moving on though, I want to show you one more thing, and it's a comparison between her hair with soft light and hard light. You can see how using hard light really increased the texture and the shape of her hair. Finally, let's look at hard light in beauty photography. This close-up of Sophia was shot with a small, high-intensity modifier to create a sharp, sculpted look that enhances texture, makeup, and detail. For this setup, I used an Elinchrom 17-inch or 44-centimeter silver beauty dish as my main light. I then used a large strip softbox over each shoulder with the diffusion removed. This is an indirect modifier, meaning that the light points away from the subject, so effectively I can turn it into a large silver skinny reflector that created edge highlights on both sides of her body. Then I used a grid reflector as my hair light to create some separation there between her hair and the background. And speaking of the background, I also lit that with a separate light with a grid reflector and barn doors just to create a little pop there behind her body. If you want your subject's features to stand out, whether it's in beauty work, fashion, or commercial portraits, hard light can give you the definition and crispness that you need. So on your next shoot, are you going to choose soft or hard light? It's not about one being better than the other. It's about choosing the right one to match the mood, style, and subject that you're working with. If you want a smooth, flattering, and cinematic feel, soft light will likely be your best choice. If you want something dramatic, sculpted, and full of detail, hard light will help you achieve that look. Well, I think that about wraps it up. If you want to check out any of the gear that I used in today's video, I will link to it below. Also, if you could please like, subscribe, and sign up for the bell, I would really appreciate it. If you want to take your learning to the next level, check out the Academy with John Gress, my online members-only learning platform where you can get access to exclusive tutorials that you won't find here on YouTube and participate in 2 monthly live Q&A and critique sessions where we can go over anything you want in a small group. For more information and to get a 3-day free trial, go to johngress.com/academy. Thank you so much for your time. If you have any questions or comments, please leave those below. And as always, I hope that you have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you soon.